Well, thank you again for joining us, everyone. My name is Rebecca Curry, and I'm the Public Services Supervisor in Special Collections and Archives, which is hosting this event. And we've now come to our Q&A segment. You can submit your questions at emporia.edu/live. You can find the information for this event near the top of the page, and there's a link to a handy Google form. So while we give everyone a moment to find that form, Julie, I actually have a question that I'd like to ask.
Sure.
So as someone who has spent most of her life in Kansas, I was kind of wondering of what maybe the inspiration for Opulence was, if it's maybe based partially on a real place, maybe a composite of various places.
Yeah, absolutely. We bought a house a few years back outside of Ellenwood, Kansas, which is just east of Great Bend. And I like to tell people, if Kansas is a rectangle and you draw an X from corner to corner, our house is 4 miles west of where they cross, right in the middle. I had no previous connections with the state at all. I didn't even set foot in Kansas until I was like 40 years old. And my husband and I used to drive out to Colorado to do camping and hiking in the mountains and so on. And sometimes we would spend the night in Great Bend to split the drive up from Chicago. And I started to get into bird watching and discovered that there were some wildlife refuges near Great Bend, Cheyenne Bottoms and the Quivira National Wildlife Refuge. And my eyes were just opened to just these wonderful places and the amazing birds. And we just fell in love with it out there. We just fell in love with the prairie and the skies and the grasses and the birds. And we just quit going to Colorado and we just kept coming back to Kansas. And, and then as the years kind of went by and we were starting to think about what we want to do with retirement. And I knew for one thing, I sure didn't want to stay in Chicago any longer than I had to. And we found this little old farmhouse on 7 acres outside of Great Bend. It's 5 miles from Cheyenne Bottoms. And that's where we're planning to relocate. So Ellenwood is the town that Opulence is very loosely based on. It does have little tunnels under the businesses on the main street. And so I just started sort of learning about the history and the community. And I just, wanted to share this experience of someone coming into the state that people, it's the flyover state and how wonderful it was and how I fell in love with it. And that was kind of the impetus for just kind of wanting to share that experience. And so it's not a real place. It's a composite. There's other places too, but there are some scenes in the book. There's a couple scenes take place in Salina. Again, sort of imaginary businesses, but based on what we've run into there. And so, yeah, it's a combination of realistic details and imagination.
Interesting. I guess kind of as a follow-up, something I'm also interested in knowing is when you were planning this story, did you kind of feel a need to plan Opulence out visually? Like, did you draw a map for yourself or?
No, I didn't draw a map or anything. I had locations in my head just from, the places that we've been. My cat is playing around the computer here, so I'm trying to keep her out of range. And I did plan the story out scene by scene and so on, but the settings I just kind of made up as I went along. It was mostly just made up, but bits and pieces of things that struck me that I thought were beautiful or interesting that I put in there.
I see. So far, no one has submitted any questions yet, but we do have a comment.
Okay.
From Tracy, who just says that I so enjoyed hearing this in your voice.
Tracy is my long-suffering publisher, and I'm so grateful. I also like to tell the story of when I first finished writing this novel, and I thought, here I've got this kind of quiet, low-key little youth novel And it's not a multi-volume dramatic intergalactic saga or anything. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with this? And I thought, maybe I could find a publisher with an interest in the Midwest or located in the Plains or in Kansas, especially. And so I just Googled small presses Kansas, and it led me to this directory from the Poets and Writers website. And they have a directory of small presses. So I just typed in Kansas, and the first one that came up was Meadowlark Books. And so I looked at the website and I looked at the books that they'd already published, and I really liked the look of them and the kinds of stories they were. And they very much had the Kansas focus. And so I sent it in, and then after the reading period closed, I remember Tracy posted, I think it was on Facebook or website or something, about, we have these just amazing submissions and they're all so good. I wish I could publish all of them. And I'm going, oh, okay. Oh, well, it was worth a shot. It wasn't a bad idea. And then she emailed me and said that they wanted to publish it. So we were off on this adventure, and I'm just couldn't be more pleased with working with Tracy and Meadowlark. It's really been a wonderful experience.
That's great. The wonders of the internet.
Yeah, because I don't know that I would have found them if it hadn't been for that. So thank goodness for that.
Well, we'll give people another minute or two to see if we have any more comments or questions come in. While we do that, is there anything else you'd like to discuss about the book or your process in writing it? Or
it's like people always like to ask writers, how do you write? Like there's some kind of magic formula. And I write things in my head for like months before they ever get down into black and white. And so I just sort of scene by scene by scene, I lie there in bed trying to fall asleep, and I kind of map out the scene and who's going to say what. And let's see, oh wait, I need to go back and check this date to be sure that that timeline fits together. And then these long intervals of weeks, I'll sit down and write a scene and then go on to the next one. So it's just kind of a slow process. It takes me a really long time, but that's just how it is. So I didn't necessarily set out to write this as a youth novel, but it just seemed like it fit that coming of age and rites of passage and learning new experiences and meeting new people. It just seemed like the right kind of setting for the story. So that's how that all kind of evolved. And, there's not really much that came out of I've certainly never lived in a Gold Coast condo in Chicago. When I did research looking up real estate ads for condos, and I'm looking at these pictures with my eyes bugging out of my head, like, oh my gosh, people really live like this. So that was an interesting experience. But so, yeah, that's kind of how it went. I have written a couple of other short stories. I got started really writing short stories set in Kansas as we started to spend more time there. And I wrote one about a toll booth keeper on the toll booth at the Admire exit off the Kansas Turnpike. Just one little booth with one little person in it. And, so that kind of, it started my juices flowing a little bit. And I just thought, there's just something in the air here that gives me ideas or gives me feelings and things that I want to share.
That's interesting. I'm impressed that you can keep all that plot in your head for weeks at a time.
I don't know how that works. It may not always be the best idea, but because sometimes I'll write something and then I'll think, wait a minute, didn't I say this like 15 pages ago? And I have to go back and fix it. But yeah, that's just how it happens for me.
Yeah. Well, we haven't actually seen any more questions come in, so I guess everyone's inquiries have been answered.
Okay, well, that's fine. Thank you so very much for inviting me. This has been quite an experience and a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the invitation. I hope other people will go out and look for the book. A few of the public libraries have started picking up copies of the book. It's available directly from Meadowlark. It's available online. So if anybody's interested, they certainly should be able to find a copy, and that would be lovely.
Yeah, well, once again, thanks for coming, everyone. We hope that we'll see you at our events in the future.
Okay, thank you.